from the Alaska State Council on the Arts and Alaska Community Foundation, AK Can Do, a COVID relief grant. Today we're discussing Art of Saving Lives, artwork on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Indigenous visual artists Amber Webb, Itta and Sarah Whalen-Lunn are joining me to discuss their ongoing projects to raise awareness about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Alaska has the 4th highest rate of murdered and missing women in the United States. Am I right, or has that statistic been updated? I think one of you would know.
I think that it's likely that that statistic will be higher in the near future, because a lot of what I understood from Abigail Echohawk is that a lot of the precincts that she solicited data from refused or had such high costs associated with getting the data that she wasn't able to get it. So it's possible that we may be much higher on that list.
Thanks, Amber. Amber Webb's a Yupik artist and activist from Kooryung, Alaska. Her work visually explores the continuing effects of colonial trauma and healing. She works in textiles, portraiture, ink, and other media to explore what resilience, resistance, and cultural healing look like. I'm so glad to have you with us today. Amber, tell us a little bit more how you became involved in the work of advocacy for MMIWG.
Well, I think the place it started from knowing people and losing people. But, you know, even before that, I think that I was watching some of the activism in Canada and down in the lower 48 too. And I was thinking, I knew people were doing the work, but I wasn't seeing the work. So I wanted to see it here too. And I felt like it just came out of just the huge heartbreak of even watching what losing a family member in such a violent way does to one family, much less, you know, all of our families. So that's kind of where I started from.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. Bobby Lynn Itta is an Inupiaq artist from Utqiagvik, owner of Arctic Luxe, a line of apparel and contemporary clothing. She creates customary clothing and invites Indigenous women to make a tiklook in honor of a woman, friend, or relative that's missing or murdered. Bobby, welcome. Really glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
So you've had a design studio, Arctic Luxe, for several years and created everything from leggings printed with spotted seal to regalia. For over 20 years, you've been sewing, maybe longer, please correct me. You've been involved in Indigenous fashion shows, and recently you've been teaching customary art forms. And as part of that, helping women survivors of MMIWG create a tiklook or kuspuk in memory of loved ones they've lost. This is kind of a big transition into education and advocacy. How did that happen for you? How's that feeling?
So it just kind of, when I first had, when you at Bunnell Art Center, you guys did a Take a Look exhibit, I kind of just wanted to create something new and in honor of my sister that was murdered. Her name was Nancy. So she was murdered in 2002. And so she's been gone for 19 years. And that was my first kind of like start of MMIWGS, and having you reach out to teach other women how to make a tikaloos and working on this new exhibit. It's been really nice. I really enjoyed our classes online through Zoom. Just letting people, I mean, like becoming part of a group was, I really enjoyed that because I felt like I wasn't alone. Before that, I didn't really know too many other, or I didn't know a lot of my other friends, you know, were that were affected too much. I mean, like my family was affected, and like my great grandma was murdered too. My mom's best friend was murdered, but it's like such a touchy subject to talk about. So it was a good, safe place for us ladies to talk about. And um, it feels good that we're going to be having this exhibit, and it's going to be a traveling one, and it'll bring awareness more to Alaska. So I'm really happy to be part of it. And I was really inspired by Amber's, what she's done with her cuss books. I went to the Anchorage Museum and seen her big cuss book there with all the faces. Yeah, I'm happy to be part of this.
Thank you, Bobby. And I want to talk more about the protection exhibit, which you're all a part of, the touring exhibit coming up in 2022 through 2024, and also about the ways that you each are a part of creating and elevating community through your work. But first, I want to introduce Sarah Whalen-Lunn. Welcome, Sarah. I've been patient here, and yet so incredibly important. As an Inupiaq artist, a mother of 3 girls, you paint, carve, and stitch. You said to give voice to the Indigenous female experience as you know it. You describe yourself as pushing yourself to talk about the harder subjects of mental and emotional trauma, abuse, and activism, while embracing the beauty of everyday experience. Whalen-Lunn is a 2018 Rasmussen Grant recipient, and she posts on Instagram under Ink Stitcher.
So is Amber.
Oh yeah. Sarah, tell us a bit about your journey into becoming an advocate for the reverence and protection of women and girls.
So I think, you know, as a Indigenous female in this world, we don't know anybody who's not been affected by this. You know, you start having these hard conversations. I'm already going to start crying. I apologize. You start having these conversations with people, with other women, and there's no one who's not been affected by this. So I think it's, as sad as it is, it's a part of breathing, a part of walking, a part of living your life always aware as a Native woman. And really, I mean, I like everybody else have lost people. My auntie was murdered back when I was 8. And when I started to grow up and I had my girls, I was in an extremely abusive relationship, like many Native women I know. I'm not alone in that. And it took me a long time to get out. And at one point I thought, like, he's gonna kill me. He threatened to kill me. And I thought that was going to happen. And I thought about my girls. And when I was able to find my way out of that, through Alaska Network of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, by the way, anybody who needs help, they're amazing. When I found my way out of that, it just kind of became a natural way of my processing. I started doing artwork again for the first time in the 8 or so years that I had been in that abusive marriage. And one of the first really big things that I did was called the offering. All about opening the conversation and opening the box, the taking away the taboo around these issues of abuse and violence. So I think it just, you can't breathe in this world without it affecting you and without seeing the effects of it. in everybody you know. And so I think in that way, I had no choice. You know, I talk a lot about how my art is processing the world around me. And I feel like I very literally had no choice, because I don't have words for it a lot of times. So then I can get it out in my imagery, and in that way, hope that it's helping people. So.
Yeah. Sarah, say again the name of the agency that helped you so much make the transition to safety.
Alaska Network, Alaska, if I'm saying it wrong, I'm just gonna, Alaska Network on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. They're an amazing organization. And I know that we've got some other Alaska Native-led organizations too. I don't have all of the names of those, but you know, they really, they found me a pro bono lawyer to get out of the situation that I was in. And they really take it upon themselves to be brave for you when you're not ready to yet. You know, I wasn't ready to be brave yet. I was still really, really scared. And they got me to the point where I could be brave for myself, you know, so they're amazing.
That's huge. Thank you for sharing that resource.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So one of the things that really has inspired me about your work, Sarah, is, and at least, you know, following you on Instagram, is like, I see your posts with your daughters and the things that you're doing with them. And I really think that, I don't know if this is so much a question or a statement, but I think about that because, like, because of the way that the state and the country were colonized and the pattern of colonization, you know, not only are we several generations deep in experiencing this trauma, but we're also several generations deep in parenting to protect our kids. And how I'm really interested in how some of your work explores womanhood, because I think that what I see in your work is I see a lot of like exploring how to find like joy and be truly yourself when a lot of us, I know myself, speaking for myself, I was parented in such a way that I was taught to always be careful about certain things. And I know that the fact that, you know, like my great grandmothers were both trafficked, you know, and we know these things and we don't really think about it, but I really have been inspired to be a lot more intentional about how I parent. And I think that that's been pretty inspiring, watching how you've done that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that for us as Native women, we're all taught, this is something Holly and I talk about a lot. We're taught not to sexualize ourselves, right? Because somebody else is already doing it. We're taught not to celebrate our sexuality, celebrate our bodies, celebrate any of these things, because somebody is going to hurt us. Somebody is going to take that and they're going to hurt us because they see us only as these objects. So we're taught to cover up, to not be, to dramatically try and reduce ourselves so that hopefully no one will see us long enough to want to do something bad. And it's horrible. That's horrible. So a lot of the work that I do, I think does kind of focus on that, intentionally or unintentionally. It does focus a lot on, but I think that's part of advocacy too, right? It has to be, is finding our joy, us finding our joy and showing it.
Yeah, and resisting invisibility. I'd love to show images of all of your work now as we kind of get into a little bit more, I guess, let's see if I can do this. Can you guys see your work, or did I not share the right screen?
Oh, I don't see anything.
Okay, thanks. I think I need to do, let's see.
There we go.
There we go, thank you. Yeah, so here's a an image that captures work by the three of you, and we'll look more closely at each of your own work. But I want to say that just for starters, in response to that idea of resisting invisibility, these really bold and beautifully graphic ways in strong color, you are all, catching attention. And I think, let's just perhaps, if you want to, begin, Sarah, by talking about the red hand, because this is such a powerful symbol which you've connected Alaska, to international movements, especially in Canada, with your work elevating this image, what it means, and why you're doing it.
I do a lot of work with Native movement organization, and they're an organization I really believe in all their causes, all the work that they're trying to do. And I knew that there was a rally coming up. I drew this back in 2019. I received an email, and the story is going to be much less sentimental. For this one in particular, I had an image that came to me, and I wanted to get out some sort of very, very graphic way that the Native movement, they were doing a protest or a vigil / rally, which they always do in honor of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, trans, two-spirit. That coincides with AFN. And in 2019, it was in Fairbanks, and I wasn't going to be able to make it, and I hadn't contributed anything in a while. And I just sat for a minute and thought about if I could do something graphically that would have an impact that they could then take to their rally, something that people could kind of grab onto immediately and know what it's for. I mean, I was not expecting it to do what it's done, but the idea behind it, a lot of people aren't aware, but the star in particular is, for us, we believe all of our ancestors are up in the sky, right? When the Northern Lights are here, they're up there, that's them dancing, that our connection with the sky and the stars and everything up there. And to me, the star was representative of all the women that we've lost, always looking down on us, and us always working, always keeping on working, trying to raise the awareness. So really, this was a quick thing that came into my mind. It just was that easy that morning. I knew they were having the rally. I wanted something easy but poignant that they could use. And I drew that up that morning with my coffee and sent it in and said, hey, I hope you like this, and I hope it's something you feel like you can use for your rally. And they printed it out on patches. They're still the only organization that has my blanket permission for its use. But they printed it out on patches, and everybody at the rally got one. People were wearing them on their backs, and so it did, and it's out there doing what I hoped it would, which is giving people something to connect to.
Yeah, powerfully. Had you seen the red hand used before?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The red hand is synonymous. The red hand is synonymous with the movement. So that's not mine. This isn't mine. I just took that and put in it imagery that to me spoke about it.
Yeah.
Can,
Go ahead, Amber.
can I just briefly add? So Jordan Marie brings 3 horses. Daniels was a athlete that ran the Boston Marathon, and she ran it. She's been running marathons, and she represented a woman for each mile of the marathon, and she was the first one to use the red hand, and then it became a sports. It became something that people would do when they were competing in sports to compete in honor of women, and so that's kind of where that started. And I just wanted to add that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm so glad you did, because we're seeing the red hand in runners across Canada and the United States with increasing frequency, and now it's connecting and building more community, as you were referring to that earlier. It's powerful and so interesting how through your adaptation of the image, you brought Alaska into that community, and I really respect that about your vision. In the middle image, we see maybe the most recent Ititluk that Vavi Itta has made. Knowing you, you've probably sewn another one since this, but I don't know if this one is more than a week old. But tell us about this Ititluk and what it means.
So I created this Ititluk in the workshop I hosted for MMIW. I was looking for red fabric a few weeks ago maybe even a month ago before the class. And I came across red with the ravens and eagles on it, and it instantly spoke to me. My sister, so I made this in honor of her, more like as if she would wear it. Like the theme was for my class was to make something in honor of, the person that you want to honor that's been missing, murdered. So I told them, make it in the size that you think they would wear or the style that they would use. And my sister wasn't a fan of Ititluk's too much, but I think she would wear this. She was kind of like a tomboy. So I made it pretty basic, but I think she would totally love to wear this. And I chose the ravens because before she passed, maybe like a year before she passed away, she really got into, we went to AFN and there was a lady that was talking about spirits and like your spirit turning into another animal. And my sister like jokingly said, let your spirit into the sky and become one with the raven. And she like wouldn't quit. And she even went on to other animals, but she just did the impression of a raven so well that it was just, the ravens just remind me of her. So whenever I see a bunch of ravens around, I feel like my sister is coming to say hi. So I thought she would wear the crisscross hood. So this one is my newest piece in honor of her. The other one that I did before was a lace dress one, which something I would wear, but she wouldn't wear. She'd probably get mad at me if she was wearing a dress. So this one speaks to me more like that's what she would wear if she let me even make something for her.
Yeah, I love that bold red fabric and the just the boldness of the ravens against it. And I really think it's powerful how you kind of found a connection to some of the more interesting words that she's said about letting your spirit into the sky, like a kind of, I don't know, to me it sort of strikes me as like a gift she gave you before she passed somehow, because she said it in such a positive way,
Yeah. And like how you said it's so bold. She was such a bold person. Like this is just like, just speaks to me that that was like her. So
And again, a powerful way of like resisting, you know, invisibility, quietness, tamping down around the issue, just really letting it.
yeah, and I think that's how I kind of, because I'm such a quiet person too, I use my sewing and art to like not be invisible. That's like, because I can't say it in words. There's so many things that I want to say, but it just comes out in my sewing instead of like I'm so bad at writing too, but everything that I make, it's just like it's all in there.
Bobby, I love the concept. I mean, I feel like a lot of the time anymore, we don't make clothing for our relatives who passed on and then, you know, burn it to send it to them. But it makes me think of that tradition of, you know, sending the actual thing that you make up into the sky to your relative to honor them. But I this might be an odd question. Does she have a Inupiaq namesake?
She was, her Inupiaq name was Kamagan. She was named after my grandma.
Did somebody get her name?
Yeah, my second oldest, her name's Summer, and she looks just like her.
Is that her size?
Maybe.
Love.
I don't know if she would wear it. I mean, she's so funny because so my oldest is named Nancy after my sister, but my second oldest with her Inupiaq name, she is the spitting image of my sister, just taller. Oh,
I love
that's so
that.
funny.
I love the idea of making it for her, right? Really thinking deliberately, what would she wear? And yeah, she'd be pissed if I tried to put her in the lace one, you know? I love that too. And I love the idea of maybe getting your daughter to wear it, or the idea of releasing it up into the sky too is gorgeous. It's beautiful, Bobby.
Thank you. And your work always inspires me. It's just like I can't paint and I can barely draw. So like you guys are so inspiring in your work. And I'm just like, I only just speak through the sewing machine, or well, I speak through my hands. I think we all do.
We all do.
That's right.
I
Absolutely.
think that, sorry. I think that that's really, I'm always really impressed with your sewing skills, Bobby, because I try really hard to sew and I'm like kind of so at it, but I can't really sew like as impeccably. Like you can see in your work how many years went into developing that skill set, and it's just beautiful. Like I feel like I can't say that enough because I've tried to do it and it's really hard.
Thank you. But I've seen your work too. I mean, your cuss books you brought to the exhibit, I was so impressed. Like I was blown away that you made them by hand.
Don't look too close at the stitching though.
It's okay. I know how you feel. That's when I was like first starting to skin sew, and we'd have contests because we do baby contests, and I'd be like, just don't look real close.
Oh, you make it look easy, Bobby.
Oh my gosh, I've been working on a parka for like 3 or 4 days just to get it to be exactly how I want it. I made the body like too long, and then I made the skirt too long, and I kept on shortening it and shortening it. And I'm like, I better not mess up. I better not make it too short. And I was like, should have just listened to my first pattern. I made patterns for a reason. It almost ended up being exactly the same as the pattern, but I made it longer and longer, and it was like almost down to my feet. I'm like, why did I waste all that time? All I had to do was extend the skirt.
On the far right, we're looking at an image, a recent piece of on ink, on wood with ink by Amber Webb. Amber, tell us about this. Whoops, I went backwards. Sorry. Tell us about this piece, and then we'll go through and look at each of your works more closely. Followed by this image, followed by your cusp book. Tell us about this piece, Amber.
Well, this piece came out of this moment where I was like, they were talking about shutting down the airport here in Dillingham and shutting down businesses and staying in your homes. And I was thinking about, you know, all of the people that I've known that really weren't safe at home, or are houseless relatives that don't have a home to go to. And I just had this overwhelming sense of dread and fear for all the people that would be affected by this, and just that like sense of dread, knowing what was coming, where people were going to be getting evicted and it was going to just be catastrophic. And I just thought, like, how I just sat there for a second, I closed my eyes, and I just said this prayer, like, to just bring as much comfort as possible to every single one of those people, because it just broke my heart. And I felt like that wasn't people that should have been thinking about that weren't thinking about it. And it made me pretty upset. So I made this, I just drew it up because I just had this vision of like our ancestors are always protecting us all the time, even when we can't see it, and even when we can't feel it, they're always with us, you know, and there's never a point where they're not with us. And I was thinking about how how much energy and power that has. So I put the hands like going around the woman, and then the hands coming in from the top corner that would try to hurt this woman. I was just imagining that those hands would protect her. So I think there are those moments in life where you, like, these moments happen a lot for me as an artist and as a person, where I look at what's happening in the world, in the state, in the country, and I get really frustrated because I can't fix it. I can't change it. Like, these unfair things that we experience. And I can relate to what both of you say, where like sometimes there aren't words. There just aren't any words to try to explain to somebody what you're feeling, what you're trying to like deal with inside yourself, and you have to just let it out. And so that's kind of what that piece was doing. But
so wait a minute here. I'm trying to advance. What am I doing? Here we go. I wanted, to go back to, the ways in which through your pen, through your ink, you are so articulate. You say you don't have words. I think you're very articulate, but you are truly articulate with your pen. Describe to us these two garments and the process of inspiration and creation.
well, initially when I started this project, I decided to make a prototype, and I thought, I would find some data, some numbers, and I would make a giant gust book and put feathers on it or something to represent the numbers. And when I started doing research, I couldn't find anything. And this was right before the the MMIW database that Anita Lucchese developed was released. And she's been really intentional about protecting that data. And then not too long after that, the Urban Indian Health Institute also released a study with more numbers, but this was in 2018 and it was on New Year's. And I remember waking up and reading the news on my phone, and there was another woman that had been killed. And I felt like if I didn't get it out, I couldn't even function. I got to the point where I had already lost several people who were pretty close to my family and was trying to figure out how to honor them anyway. And then I just couldn't bear it. And so I went to a thrift store and I found some white sheets. They're not even all the same type of fiber. It's like really patchwork, but the original one, the smaller one, was which is now at the Anchorage Museum, was supposed to just be a prototype for the big one. And I had no idea that it was going to do what it did. I thought, oh, I'll just make this cheap prototype and then I'll see what it looks like and see if it works, and then I'll make the bigger one. And so the smaller one just had women from Alaska on it. And then I applied for a Rasmussen Foundation grant for the second one. And I actually originally, when I did the project, that was the first time I had ever talked to Sarah, because my husband's aunt had mentioned her to me. And then I started looking at her work, and I was thinking I would have other artists partner with me on it, but that was a little too difficult to coordinate because I had been moving around a lot. So this was, it was kind of like, I figured at that point when I couldn't find any data, that the best thing to do would be to try to make life-size portraits and to just say, hey, you know, if you look at all of our faces at once, I dare you to ignore us now. You know, like, here we are, and here are, like, these are the people that we're missing, and we're not going to forget about them. And I tried to get in touch with as many families as I could to ask permission. I couldn't get a hold of everyone, and I tried to be kind of careful about how I shared the names and not share them too much, because the drawings are a little different than actual photos, because they're not exact likenesses. And some of them are, you know, like the permanence of ink is that if you're drawing with Sharpie on fabric, you know, once you make a mistake, it's on there, you know. So I figured it was kind of like life, or whatever came out was going to come out, and I would just learn to be humble about sharing some of my sort of varying success. But the project ended up being much, much bigger, and now it really doesn't feel like it's my project. I feel like it has its own kind of life, and my job is just to kind of facilitate it being where it needs to be, and try to protect it. But you know, and it took 2 years. I'm not completely finished with it, but I wasn't anticipating that after about a year of working on it, that like carrying around all of that information, what that would do to my spirit. I didn't anticipate how heavy it truly would be. But I feel like one of the things about it is, and it's interesting because in this picture, this was the first time that we had people hold it up, and it was just because I didn't have the frame, but I have since presented it usually in this same way, where I just have people hold it, because, you know, we are all carrying this together, and we don't have to carry that weight and that burden alone. And I think that's the part of it that I wanted really to be about healing, was and just like you know, honoring each other's struggles too, I guess.
And I want to just say something really quick. Have always been absolutely just floored by your work, blown away by it. And I think a lot about doing things with intention. And when I see this and think about how you had to sit with each one of these women and the intention that went into every single depiction that you did for them, and just what an incredible way to honor them. And I'm just so thankful that you did it. I can't imagine the weight of that. It's just really powerful work.
Absolutely stunning. So Amber arrived to the Cuspik show, the Attikluk show we had at the Nell Street Art Center in 2019, and she came at the opening, and the room is full of people, mostly women, and she unfurls this thing, and it's like it's growing in the room, you know, and it's growing to actually stretch to the corners of the room, and we're all holding this up. It was a incredible honor to share that weight with you for a moment, and I feel like it actually, you know, lifted the room into this place of connectivity and communion and connection together. That's extremely powerful, and that's really at the heart of the exhibit: protection, adaptation, and resistance, which all of you are a part of, because it's exploring the ways in which you're each stitching and strengthening aspects of community through your art and your advocacy that are truly unique to yourselves, authentic to your own way of working, and contributing in that sense a very important voice to Indigenous survivance. Amber,
Oh, sorry. Am I
please go ahead.
interrupting again?
No.
One thing I wanted to add to that was I had been trying to find Bobby's sister. Somebody had mentioned her name to me, and I had been trying to find a photo of her or find her family, and I didn't realize that that was Bobby's sister. And I'd met Bobby before, and I that was at that particular moment where I found that out, and I was able to get a photo of her, and it was it meant so much to me to be able to do that, because I had been thinking about her over and over, and I like some people, like, you can tell they're just not supposed to be on there. They just don't, like, for whatever reason, it's just not gonna happen. But I kept thinking about her, her name and her story, and it was bothering me for like a year. So that was really special.
Thank you so much, Amber. And here's another view of your piece, Prayer for Safety, which was shown recently at Protection, Body, Mind, and Spirit, another exhibition that the three of you were recently a part of in October up in Nell Street Art Center. So thinking about community and the ways each of you are engaged in a kind of social sculpture, if you will, you know, shaping and deepening community through your work. Here's a picture of Bobby with two friends, I assume, modeling some of the amazing Attikluk, the regalia that you make as part of your work with Art at Lux. And these are images which you know well because they're from your website, and it shows the kind of pride and, you know, identity and sisterhood and perpetuation of culture that you're creating through this work. And at the same time, you have this amazing industry, this business, you know, with these very clever and unique wearable garments and accessories for the home that have lovely, you know, images of spotted seal and just bring Indigenous identity and pride to all kinds of bodies. And then we see you here with the first Attikluk that you made, the lace one you mentioned, honoring Nancy, and then the more recent one, which you describe as a more true, an Attikluk truer to her. So it's a really a remarkable journey that you've kind of been on as you get deeper into sewing. Um, and I'm so sorry you lost your sister. I've been thinking about how you've been living with that for many years. I'm curious, if you talk a little bit more about how your work helping others to create a tiklik has helped you to process your own grief, and what do you see happening in the circles that you sustain in these workshops?
So the workshop that I did for MMIW, it was really healing. Just having others, tell their stories about, who they lost in their family and, what happened. It's always such a touchy subject to talk about. It's almost like taboo in your culture to like speak about it, because I don't know, it's just a really hard subject to talk about. And sometimes you don't know what happened to your loved one. A lot of times there's no justice, which is, I think, why it's hard to talk about. And for me, I mean, it was my own uncle that murdered my sister, my mom's brother, and he's serving life in prison. And I've forgiven him, but it took me 10 years to talk to him and tell him that I forgive him. A lot of my healing comes from my faith. That's how I'm able to get through things and keep going forward, keep moving forward. And it's just always really, I don't know, it's been really hard. Seems like the longer time passes by, it gets easier. The first couple of years, I couldn't talk about her without crying. And now that, like, being an advocate about MMIW, it's easier to talk about, and I feel like I'm not alone in it, and yeah, I'm just happy to, hear it's hard to hear other people's stories, but it's also healing in a way. I don't know, it's so strange sometimes. Like it's a bad thing that happened, but it's like I'm not alone. And then in my mind, I'm always like, okay, how can I protect my daughters and my son from anything happening to them? Because even earlier, like, it's so automatic. Like, we were at Barnes and Nobles earlier, and there was a weird guy in the store, and automatically, that comes to mind, or where are my girls? And like, every time we go anywhere, to any store, I'm always like, make sure you're together with someone. You're not allowed to be alone in whatever store we go to. If you want to go to the toy section, make sure you have someone with you. I don't want you to be alone. So I'm always like constantly like in my mind, making sure that I'm protected, my kids are protected. When that guy left the store earlier too, I just was like, we're not leaving the store. We're going to wait like 10-15 minutes. We can look around. It gets scary sometimes,
Yeah.
but
When you when you create these spaces for women to make a tiklik like this one, it's different though, isn't it? I mean, it's like it's kind of a space that's designed around creating safety and sharing. I know this particular piece has an interesting story that you know something about, and it's a fascinating and quite recent piece from one of your workshops. Could you share the artist's name perhaps and a little bit about it?
So a woman named Cassandra made this one. She recycled jackets, so, and made it into an atikalik. I believe she's Inupiaq. She lives in Unalakleet, but the story behind it was, I think her aunt went missing, and when they found her, she wasn't wearing anything. So she said she always thought about her, and that if she wanted to make something with jackets, because she always wanted to, like, because she was found with nothing on, she wanted to make her something that would keep her warm. So all the different pieces are from different jackets. And I thought that was it was something like I didn't really think about before, you know. There are a lot of women that just go missing and are out in the cold, and like I didn't even think about that because, you know, it didn't happen to me. I mean, like my sister, she was, you know, she was murdered, but she was inside a home, not missing or anything, you know, outside. So it was really interesting to hear, you know, to see her piece and her talk about her piece.
Yeah. It's such a unique, I mean, it's a totally unique piece. It must be like one of the most unique atiklik that's come out of your workshops. And I personally look at it and I love the personality that comes through in it, you know, the individualism, like Amber's piece that brings a face, you know, to the numbers. This one really stands out.
Yeah. Because that could be any number of women with all the different coat pieces.
Yeah, that's an added aspect of it, isn't it? The way in which she evokes several different, you know, several different garments, several different lives.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
almost, oh, sorry. It almost makes me think of the, how what Bobby is creating when she's making these pieces is protection. Like every stitch and every moment that she puts into making these garments, they are protecting people, because that's what our clothing and our clothing traditions do, right? And that's really beautiful.
Yeah, you're bringing a new level of kind of life and relevance into traditions, which is the perhaps one of the meanings behind cultural survivance is you know, resisting this idea that culture was something that happened before and it's a way people used to live. It speaks to the vibrancy and the living adaptations that are part of surviving.
It goes back to that idea of intention and protection. And this is the way that what we did, the things that we did with intention, the clothes we made for our loved ones that protected them.
Mm-hmm. It's so weird to think about that, because I mean, that's how it all starts. When I first got into sewing, it was to keep my kids warm. So it's like I'm protecting them from the cold.
Yeah. Not that intention that you sew into it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that really makes me think about your work, Sarah. And I think about like the really fascinating connection between stitching and tattoo, a kind of sewing, if you will, and this construction of protection that happens through simultaneous long traditions of sewing. Can you talk a little bit about how, as a visual artist, you know, who has done so many different forms of carving and marking, you got into tattoo, and how that is shaping and building power for Indigenous women?
Holly Nordlum. Holly Nordlum. I love you, Holly, if you're watching this. She's the reason that I'm tattooing. She's the one who, at least for me, brought about awareness that there was traditional tattooing in our history. I grew up really disconnected, so I had no idea. And I ended up going through a whole program to learn the process of traditional tattooing. But the thing that I find, and the thing that it does, and it does what she hoped it would, it gives us back a piece of our identity that is crucial, and it helps in the healing process. You know, along with not knowing any families who aren't touched by the ongoing cases of missing, murdered Indigenous women, there's also so much trauma, and there's so much abuse, and there's so much need for awareness just in constant everyday life, and so much shame. And when you're in a room with another Native woman and you're working in this way with their skin that's so intimate, you know, these are where, at least for me, I have my most important conversations. We laugh, we cry, you know, I mean, it's all over the place. But this is, I look at it like, this is not me. This is our ancestors working through me. I'm privileged enough to get to be a vehicle for work that's been going on for thousands of years. And doing it now, it's like we get to reapply this armor. So in that way, it's all about protection. Again, it's about recognizing and coming into who you are. It's about letting go of some of that hurt and that pain of growing up in the Western world, Native. It's about, you know, really that joy. It's about bringing back some of that joy of who we are. And each of these markings is very much like protection to me. But I just happened to be lucky enough to receive the training. Right person, right time, I guess. So.
Mm. And we have some other images of your work. We looked at the red hand image that you created earlier, but also some more recent powerful images that you've created within the last year or two, just in light of assaults to bodies of color and elevating solidarity and sisterhood amongst, you know, BIPOC women. Tell us a little bit about these pieces, images that also will be a part of the protection touring exhibit, and how and when they came about.
Well, as we all know, the Black Lives Matter movement, that should have been a bigger deal for all of history. It's in the past couple of years really come to a boiling point, right? And rightfully so. And I really struggled for a long time with what to even say about it. And like, to me, these works, they kind of show that I don't really know what to say about it. So all I can do is try and stand with, right? Like,
yeah,
not try and co-opt, not try and make it more about Indigenous versus Black lives, not try and make it, but just stand with, right? Because we're fighting a lot of the same systems. And our Afro-Indigenous brothers and sisters need us to recognize them as well. So I don't really know. I still don't have a lot of words for it. Just my full-fledged support. And I just wanted something to show that.
Absolutely. It comes through so beautifully, like with the hair braided together, for example, or standing back to back, like, I just want to have you back,
Yeah.
That imagery, that symbolism is really powerful and transcends words. Here's a gorgeous piece, another one of your carvings, like the image, the carved panel that was to your right in the previous image of you tattooed. When did you make this? Is this about a specific woman?
No, it's about all of them. I think this was also probably 2019. Just, there's always so many fights and always so many fights to be seen and recognized, and not just another headline that's gone tomorrow, if they even make the headline. It's just something that's always going on in my mind, and all of the sort of star imagery that's really prominent in a lot of my work, because that's, that's where I believe they are, where we can look to them.
Yeah. And one more image of your work, which is a theme that resurfaces the connection between the female body and the fish, a bloodline, a river, a shared suggestion of life flowing through her body and the land. Really powerful. What else should we know about this?
This was basically my complete frustration, like all of my tears, all of my anger. This was the week that the Justin Schneider case was going on, and he got let go by the judge. He was the man that strangled and ejaculated on a woman and got let off, because technically that's not a sexual assault. And she was Native. And that same week, Ashley Johnson Barr gone missing, and they found her. And I was just so angry. I just so mad and so fed up and sad and all of these emotions, but just so angry for everybody. And the piece is called "We Are Not an Expendable Resource," because I see our Native people and our Native women being just used and thrown away the same way the Western world wants to treat our waters, the same way the Western world wants to treat our fish, the same way the Western world wants to treat all of our sustainable resources, just like use it up and throw it out. And I was so tired of it. So tired of knowing that people are dealing with the pain of it. And this is what came out of that.
It's a haunting image.
Sarah, this image was really especially compelling for me at the time. And it still is, I think, because, the Bristol Bay area, a lot of the violence that occurred here, like the way that the cannery systems and the salmon fishing industry fueled the violence toward our women was really, it's an impact that's still felt today in all of our families. And I think that was really, it's like, in a way, kind of almost looking at my own history But I really liked this piece of yours, and I don't know if I ever got to talk to you about that, but I could just really see that in, I think that it's interesting piece because it seems like women all over the state are like relating to it really personally from different perspectives. And I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. It's always interesting to see how something, you put your feelings and you put your pieces out into the world, and the way that different people connect with them in different ways. They live their own lives outside of us. And that's always pretty amazing.
These images are all so incredibly powerful. They imprint, they have a physical effect, on the body through the eye, thinking about the physical labor that you do, each of you, in creation, sewing, carving, stitching, the scale. And I also think about the weight or the power of that in contrast to the kinds of traumas that you're dealing with. Amber, you've said something I think about often. You said, I understand that some of our challenges, violence and trauma, did not come from us, and I will not let that colonial imprint steal anything else from me. I can be a joyful example moving forward. I think about, you said many times, you've said, we need to help our men. I'm worried about our men. You don't let this devolve into a antagonism toward, the uncles who are incarcerated or whoever, might be involved. There's this way, this forgiveness you speak of, Bobby, too. And it's combined with the passion that you have, Sarah. It's all present in this most powerful way.
Our men are dealing with these same traumas, these same cycles that traumatized us for generations, traumatized them. And everything in their world, their place in it, who they were supposed to be in it, got flipped upside down too. So the healing that has to happen for our men is very real and very important.
There's a lot of compassion in the statement there, Sarah, underlying that, beginning with the subjugation that Indigenous men have experienced, seeing that, acknowledging that, and not placing that violence in an Indigenous worldview, but in a colonial worldview that has victimized them for generations.
I wanted to add to that, so I've done some work with the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center too. They've and ANDVSA and some other organizations. And one thing that is really different about outreach and violence prevention is that from an Indigenous worldview, we believe in healing in a different way. And I know that there are cases where sometimes people are just too broken to be able to heal, but I think that what that kind of outreach looks like for us is different because of this ongoing context of historic trauma. And it's really important to acknowledge that when we're talking about our men. And I'm seeing a lot more men that are standing up and speaking about these issues publicly, but I think it makes sense that it's women led, because it's almost like from a traditional perspective, at least in the community that I come from, it's almost like they're waiting for permission in a way, like, and from us, at least here, that's what it seems like. But I think that it's really important to recognize that distinction, that just like with mental health, and the way that it's taught in Western systems, our medicine is really powerful, our minds are really powerful, and our belief system sometimes is different about what treatment and healing looks like. And I think it's important to honor that. And I feel like you ladies do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing this out through Facebook, and inviting others to think about these really important issues, which are deeply shaping Alaska. And the contributions that you're making, I have no doubt will resonate far beyond, especially as your work tours and as your voices, you know, live for a long time in archives like the one we're creating tonight. Are there any other comments you might like to offer in closing tonight?
I just want to say to Amber and Bobby, you guys are amazing. That's all. You're just amazing. I'm constantly inspired by who you guys are. I've spent some time talking to you both personally and can't even talk about like that light of being able to talk to you guys. But I just think you're incredible. That's all.
I think you are too. You and Amber are amazing. You're so inspiring, and I'm so glad that it's so good to have like Native representation. I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier, and she was like, when did you start, you know, getting into art, and why did you get into art? And I was like, well, when I was young, I just felt like, I don't know, I didn't even want to be from my culture, and I wanted to make things cool so you could wear them every day and could represent our people. And when I was young, I wasn't proud of who like I was. And as I got older, it was just like, I just got into sewing, and then it was like I found out who I was through my culture. And I love representing, you know, being Alaska Native. Like, it's awesome. It's awesome to be Indigenous. And thank you guys for, you know, doing your work, because it inspires me to not give up too.
Thank you. It's a tremendous privilege to hang out with the